through a storm. It is Anfield Agenda time. Craig is set for the day and the news. Sit back and relax, grab a coffee and chill, and enjoy the shenanigans tonight. Anfield Agenda. Anfield Agenda. YNWA. Anfield Agenda. Time for Craig to tell it straight. Watch-alongs to fill your day. Make to subscribe and stay. Up the Reds, up the Reds. Oh, oh, ooh. Oh, oh, ooh. Oh, oh, ooh. Oh. Anfield Agenda. Anfield Agenda. YNWA. Anfield Agenda. Time for Craig to tell it straight. Watch-alongs to fill your day. Make to subscribe and stay. Up the Reds, up the Reds. Oh, oh, ooh. Oh, oh, ooh. Oh, oh, ooh. Anfield Agenda. Anfield Agenda. YNWA. Anfield Agenda.
Yes, my friends, how are we? You are very welcome along to Sunday night's Late Night Agenda. A pleasure to be with you. We've now had a look at pretty much everybody in this season's Premier League. Obviously, tomorrow Leeds and Everton still to play, but we had a look at Manchester City, we've had a look at Arsenal, Manchester United, Chelsea, and tonight we're going to try and figure out what we think. Obviously, we're going to talk about the attacking additions as well. United, £220 million spent. No goals to be had. Arsenal, well, Gyökeres not really hitting the ground running, I think it's fair to say. So, I'm sitting here rather smug as a Liverpool fan with Ugo Ekitike getting off the mark nice and early. But of course, there is still plenty to discuss. We're going to talk about the situation with Canade, Mark Guéhi. We're going to talk about Nathan Collins a little bit. We're going to ask, when are we going to make this second bid for Isak? And of course, lots more. But mainly, I want to know what your takeaway is after the first, weekend of the Premier League. Looking around for me personally, I thought Arsenal looked compact today. They look exactly what you would expect from a Mikel Arteta side. Scored from a set piece as well. Manchester United, for all their huffing and puffing, they couldn't find a breakthrough. And Chelsea, well, not exactly a great start for them, is it? You know, we know about the amount of business that they've done, but drawing a blank at home and being saved by VAR as well from that free kick. And we're going to talk about the blanking of, Oliver Glasner from Mark Guéhi at the end of that. So yes, loads to get through, ladies and gentlemen. But of course, this is your show, so you guys let me know where you want to go with it. Right, let's have a look in the chat. Mario said, yo guys, not feeling great. Well, I hope you feel better soon, my friend. My daughter is really under the weather at the minute as well. God bless her. She's suffering with her sinuses and stuff. So I feel you, mate. I feel you. Right, where are we at? The Wonder Man said, evening, Craig. How are you doing? Any Isak news? So, no, nothing earth-shattering on Isak, mate. Nothing that's going to change the situation. Romano thinks there's another bid ready to go, but look, we've been hearing the same things all the way through. Newcastle, of course, draw a blank themselves this week, and drew a blank, looking pretty blunt against Aston Villa, even with Villa down to 10 men for some of that game. So, yeah, there's nothing new on Isak. It's still, same old, same old. When are we going to make the move? When are Newcastle going to get the recruitments in? It does look like they're having some joy. There's some news around Johan Visa. Looks like that move could happen. But something actually on this caught my eye today. And since we're talking about Isak, I wanted to just bring up this because it kind of just gives you a good look at how these situations are being very differently covered in the media. So we know with the likes of Alexander-Isak, there's been plenty of pushback to say that he hasn't covered himself in glory well, or that Newcastle are looking to do X or Y. Same with Visa, but with Brentford, very different the way this is being covered. I'll read out to you what I'm about to say and then kind of try to make my point. So, I was reading earlier on, it said Brentford have completed the signing of forward Dango Utara for £42 million from Bournemouth in a club record deal. So, nothing too strange about that. But it's the next few sentences that really just gave me an insight into how differently Isak's situation's being covered in the media. So, this piece here said, Bournemouth were reluctant to sell, but after Atara made it clear he wanted to leave, the Cherries had no option but to allow him to go for a price they felt was fair market value, which includes add-ons. He signed a 5-year deal. Little bit different there, I think you'd say. Newcastle, Isak, similar situation. Told him he didn't want to go. But, of course, they won't wilt. They haven't. They have been, pretty firm in their rejection of Liverpool's interest, but I don't see the same energy there. Bournemouth had to sell because the player wanted to go and they were offered good money. If only the Isak situation could have been covered like that. Sitting back last night as well, watching Match of the Day, seeing Wayne Rooney and Alan Shearer give very one-sided takes on all of this as well is, well, it's quite frankly embarrassing. Isak has been vilified far and wide, whether it's from Newcastle fans, pundits in the media, other clubs' fans. But you know what we haven't done? We haven't heard from Isak yet. So for all the lambasting of him in the media, as Alan Shearer intimated last night, there are two sides to every story, and we haven't heard Isak's side of this yet. So let's wait and see what comes there. So what are we thinking? If you guys had a look at the Premier League weekend now, let me ask you who you think are going to be our biggest challengers. So let's just ask. So who will be our biggest problem this season? So who'll be our biggest problem? So obviously we'll put in the usual candidates. Man City, Arsenal. We'll add in Chelsea, of course. They'll be there or thereabouts. I would just put in other because, maybe you think somebody else is going to surprise. So vote away on that one. Who's going to be Liverpool's biggest challengers this year? And look, when I say that, I don't mean to sound like we're definitely winning the league, who's coming second. I don't mean that at all. I do think it's going to be a competitive title race and we'll be there or thereabouts. But I want to know who you think the most likely candidate is to replace us or to challenge us. I've seen mixed versions. Some fans think it's going to be Manchester City. Others think it's going to be Arsenal. For what it's worth for me, I still think Arsenal. Once you have that very, very good defence, it does help a lot in the title race. And Arsenal are quite miserly at conceding goals. And yes, they might not score as many as their fans would like, but they have a good foundation in that defence with Mikel Arteta and not going to be exposed too much. I don't really buy into the City narrative just yet. Of course, they blew away Wolves yesterday, but that team that they initially put out, I'd be a liar if I told you that team scared me. Now, of course, they had Cherki on the bench and they had other options as well. Reiners looked really good. Let's be fair about that as well. But I'm not there yet where I think City are back, where some people think they're going to be there or thereabouts because, they're a good squad with a good manager and lots of money behind them. But I don't know. I'm not convinced by them yet. Maybe after the first few weeks we'll get a better understanding of it. But for me, I'm still thinking Arsenal at this particular moment. But again, do want to know what you guys are thinking. Where are we? Corbin, how are you, sir? Take much away from this weekend, Craig, City, etc. It was an interesting weekend. I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that anybody watching us would have been shitting themselves because we looked open, we looked vulnerable. So, I will critique other teams, but it's always fair to say that, we have some development still to do as well. And there's no doubt improvements need to be made from us, particularly defensively. But again, you have to say, Arsenal got a good result. Going to Old Trafford, first game of the season, with that new United attack and I guess a bit more optimism from United fans, that was a good result. You know, it was. Anytime you go to Old Trafford and win, it is a good result. And I think, Arsenal managing to keep a clean sheet there is a warning sign. So I would take from this weekend that I'm still more concerned about Arsenal than City, but, that's just me. Can we say that our biggest problem is ourselves? I think you absolutely can make that point. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Like, we will get into our rhythm. No team is going to hit the ground and be perfect in week one. So I do expect us to get better, and I do expect those understandings with the defenders to improve as the weeks go on. But I totally understand where you're coming from, Mohammed, about us being our own, biggest problems. Because, well, look at the 2 goals we conceded. Yet again, turning over possession and being caught too far upfield. And it feels like it doesn't seem to matter who the personnel is, whether it's Trent, whether it's Frimpong, whether it's Endo. We are leaving those spaces in behind, and if we don't protect the football better, well, we're seeing quite how quickly we can be transitioned. And I'm not going to lie, the more I watch back Semenyo's second goal, the angrier I'm getting, because I was counting the amount of times that we could have either fouled him or at least engaged him to stop that counter-attack. So, yeah, that needs to stop first and foremost. If we give away the ball, well, sometimes you just got to take one for the team. And there were times there where I felt Canade and others could have, I know it sounds cynical, but I don't really care. It's about winning games of football, and he should have been brought down. He shouldn't have been able to get a shot away. So that still worries me. The PGMOL is the biggest threat. That's a really good point. Yeah, I can't really argue against that, Alpha Red, because week one and already. And by the way, for what it's worth, I think that hasn't gotten enough coverage. I think it almost goes under the radar when you win a game and something like that happens, because I didn't see too much covered about it. Obviously the racism incident was spoken about, and rightly so, because we don't want it in the game, but that PGMOL nonsense starting in week one, it needs to be nipped in the bud. Because yes, we went on to win the game, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That shouldn't be happening. Referees should be getting these calls. Well, maybe not the referee as such, because yes, okay, Anthony Taylor sees it once in real time. But for Michael Oliver not to sort it out, I mean, it really does anger me, because it's blatantly clear. And it's week one. The real Johnny Sin said, we're in trouble if Ryan gets injured. Can't risk it. We are. But, we're in that same position, mate, that we were last season. One injury to Ryan Gravenberch and we are in trouble. And I seen somebody in the chat said, you're all getting worked up about Bournemouth, but you're forgetting Ryan isn't there. Well, we're not. But it also makes it patently clear, as, Mr. Real Johnny Sins there has said, no Ryan Gravenberch, big problem. And I think that's more than fair. Now, I get what you're saying as well, but we've been unlucky. We haven't had Ryan for the Community Shield. We haven't had Ryan for the opening game. And we always knew we wouldn't have him for the opening game, to be fair. But it is still a fair point. We look very, very vulnerable without him in front of that defence. Petter said, Craig, thoughts on Chelsea? Not good enough, Petter, is my thoughts on Chelsea. And let's be honest, it wasn't. To have had the amount of attacking talent that they've brought in, and to draw a blank and be lucky that, VAR stopped that free kick from Eze. Yeah, that's not a great start from Chelsea. Now, like I said, you do have to remember the Club World Cup and the upheaval and the short turnaround for Chelsea, but yeah, you want to be winning those games. If you want to be thinking of yourself as a genuine title contender, or to be there or thereabouts, you got to be winning at home in the opening weekend against, a good Crystal Palace side, but still, it is at your gaff and you'd expect to win there. Benjamin, thank you, sir. Lovely to see you in New Zealand, my man. Hope you're well. Said, I was told today by a mate in Liverpool, the rumour is that a £130 million bid has been accepted for Isak for next weekend prior to the game. Thoughts? I think there's always going to be these, I don't want to call them conspiracy theories, because that's a little bit too much, but there's always going to be these fables, stories ahead of the game. And one thing kind of is true. We can't really let the situation go much further than the Newcastle game, because, time is a ticking. That's what tonight's about. We're kind of up against it now. And I'm struggling to see what a plan B is, if there is a plan B, if we don't get Isak. So, that, and I want to read out something that I read from Anthony Gordon. And he said, I think the way everything has gone, I'm sure the atmosphere is going to be a bit wild when Liverpool come to St James's Park. I'm just excited to see the home fans again, get back in the stadium. It's going to be a top game. And it is. And he's right. Liverpool best be ready, because we are going to be walking into a white hot atmosphere for that game at St James's Park. Now, I guess the good side or the bonus for Arne is he's got 9 days to prepare for it now. So plenty of time to work with the lads on the training pitch, to be drilled for what to expect from Newcastle. And it's about keeping calm heads in the opening exchanges, particularly the first 10 to 15 minutes. I know it's an age-old adage, but you do got to go there and keep it tight, nothing stupid, no rash challenges. Don't give the referee a decision to make in the opening few minutes, because it's going to be a bear pit atmosphere in there. So we got to be ready for it, and it is a good test of where we're at. So let's wait and see what comes next Monday. I'm both excited and really, really nervous by the game, because it isn't going to be easy. But back to the Isak thing. If we don't get him sorted out in and around that point, which will be 24th by then, you've a week after that to either get that deal done or to find plan B. And I honestly have not got a clue what plan B looks like at this point. I heard some murmurings today around the possibility of Malik Fofana again. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say we are signing Malik Fofana, but his name was brought up to me by a couple of different people this weekend, so certainly worth keeping an eye on that one. And the situation with Chiesa is another very interesting one, because I'm seeing and hearing mixed things about Chiesa. I hope that the idea of him staying is true, because there was a report to say that he's been told now that he is staying. And I hope that's right, because it should be. So Gazzetta Italia said, Federico Chiesa is now considered unsellable by Liverpool, which has been communicated to the winger during direct meeting with Arne Slot. I'm fine with that. We've already seen that Chiesa had that moment already this season. And if we are going to keep him around, good. Yeah, let's utilise him and properly use him this season, because you can see the desire is still there for him. But that has been conflicted by a differing report over in Italy that said, one second, this one said, Sports Italia journalist Alfonso Ciacia has claimed Federico Chiesa could yet move to Italy this summer, with AC Milan retaining an interest in the Liverpool player. Increasingly frequent contacts between Milan and the agents of Chiesa, the Italian forward, could be a real cherry on top of the Rossoneri's transfer market. Posted that on Twitter, or X, sorry. So, again, conflicting reports there. I know what I want at this point. It's Chiesa to stay, because we're about to sell Ben Doak. I'm surprised that actually hasn't been announced yet. That's pretty close. So that'll be another player out the door. And if we look at the options that Arne has, I'm still not sure that we can sit here as Liverpool fans and realistically say that N'Gommoa is an option, because, again, first 2 weeks of the season, Community Shield, a home against Bournemouth, no interest in bringing him off the bench for any minutes. And I dare say if that was Diaz, he would have been brought off the bench. So I'm not convinced that Arne is going to be using Rio N'Gommoa as the same way he would use a Gakpo and a Diaz in the squad. So for me, he's still in the young player category as of right now. So then you have Mohamed Salah, Federico Chiesa, Hugo Ekitike, Cody Gakpo. You need another one. And then we're about right. But yeah, so if Chiesa stays, I think we could get away with one more. But if Chiesa doesn't stay, it definitely has to be 2 more forwards. Ishan said Rio definitely should be an option, though. I agree, mate. I agree. But, what we hear from the club and the manager versus what we see with our own eyes, we do have to be fair about as well. So all the talk of Rio being promoted up and having a great pre-season, none of it's worth a damn if when it comes to, the crunch, if he's not used. Now, I agree, by the way. I've been really impressed with him, and I'd love to see him given more options or more opportunities. But if the manager is still unsure or uncertain that he can turn to him in these moments, then we get back to that situation we had last year when he looked to the bench and seen a Chiesa and an Elliott that he did want to bring on. And, we can't have that going into the new season. We can't have intentionally weakened ourselves up top. But on the other side of that, Hugo Ekitike, wow. I'm really, really impressed. You know, of all the big money forwards, I guess, that were on display this weekend in the Premier League, you had João Pedro, you had, obviously, United brought Sesko off the bench today, you had Gyökeres starting for Arsenal, you had Cunha, and you had Hugo Ekitike. I think you can say one of them showed up this weekend when it mattered, and that was Hugo Ekitike, and he was late as well into our squad compared to some of our other signings. So really impressed by what I'd seen from him. And yeah, very, very pleasantly surprised. You know, it almost went under the radar a little bit with some of our big money signings, the likes of Florian Wirtz. But Hugo's been impressive for me. David, always a pleasure, sir. Lovely to see you in, bro. Hope you're well. Wasted the Goat said, I'm looking at teams and their defenders won't jockey back forever, but Canade and Van Dijk does it and it angers me. VAR needs to be used properly. So the jockeying thing, mate, it does my head in. I understand it in theory, but there comes a point where you've got to engage or you've got to force the attacker to make a decision. And we just turned ourselves inside out yesterday. Like, again, let's reiterate. He picked up the ball halfway inside his own half and scores without being tackled or fouled. Madness. Absolute madness. Now, you could see with Canada, he was in two minds. Do I go here to try and jockey or engage the player, or do I look over my shoulder where there's two runners? Did neither in the end and kind of ended up falling on the ground in the penalty area. Just not great. Carbon said, hey Craig, much love from New York City and Barbados. Oh, you got to throw in the little flex of Barbados there. Love it. Very jealous. I think we do need to improve our defence, but I don't think we should be worrying too much about it because it's one game. Let the lads gel again. But respectfully, the problem I have is with the centre-backs. Now, I do understand that we have to bet in, particularly Milos Kerkez, who looked a little bit overly enthusiastic, shall we say, on the left side. But it isn't just one game. The Community Shield, pre-season, you know, how many have we conceded two in now? So I think we should be not worried about the defence, but we should be acknowledging it as a real concern. And again, we don't have enough depth there at centre-back either. Leone coming in is great, but let's see how soon we see him utilised properly. Gomez being back is good, but I'm just not convinced yet defensively. And again, I wonder where Canade's head's at. We are, 2 weeks away from him being unable to be sold, and we still don't know what's happening. It's not great. And then you've got the Mark Guéhi situation where I don't know if you've seen at the end of the game today, but he blanked Glasner. Very clearly blanked him. So for me, you got to sort that Canada situation out. I don't want the optics of him walking away for free at the end of the year. And I don't think, if he won't sign a contract this week, I'm saying we go buy Mark Guéhi and let the cards fall as they may after that, because we need to be ready for the here and now. And a player going through another season with his head elsewhere, I just can't be dealing with it. If Canade signs an extension, very different conversation, but we don't seem to be any closer to that after, how long? Quite a while, I would imagine. And, you know, we had all of last season as well, knowing this situation was coming up with Canade. At what point do we have to say he ain't signing that new deal? Joseph said, will he only start or get minutes at Newcastle? Start, I'd be absolutely flabbergasted if he starts. Will he get minutes? Probably not. You don't really see centre-backs being changed too much unless something's going wrong in a game. So, you know, unless somebody has an injury, and even at that, I would expect Gomez to be brought on because of experience. Remember, we're going to Newcastle. Very difficult atmosphere, very difficult environment. You're going to want cool, calm heads. So for me, I'd be absolutely shocked if we don't see Andy Robertson start against Newcastle. Don't know how everybody else feels, but I want experience. I want calm, composed heads going into that game. Not an early yellow being picked up by the likes of Milos Kerkez or something. So for me, I'm starting Andy Robertson in that game. Week after, we can revisit it again. But for that one away at St. James's Park, I want experience. Craig, Visa is the key. If they don't get him before a game, then we'll only go for Isak. I don't think... Now, Steve, I could be wrong here, mate, because, it is just an opinion. But I don't know if Visa will be enough for Newcastle to relent. Because maybe I'm looking at this too matter of fact and thinking, right, well, Visa is going to be the Callum Wilson replacement, which they always needed. So if it was going to be Isak to move on, I'd always assumed that they were going to have to get the second one. But, I'd love you to be right, mate. And Johan Visa to be enough to maybe tempt Newcastle into selling. But let's wait and see. Matt said... Federico Chiesa, I'm sure you mean there, is too slow and weak. One-time strikes in the box. He's amazing. Otherwise, not good enough. And I do love him. Do you know what, Matt? I actually don't know the answer, dude. Because it's not like I've got to see a lot of them in a Liverpool shirt, is it? So, I'm open to either one. I just think we need to have a definitive on Federico. It's either he's part of the team and he's going to get chances. And look, if he doesn't succeed, he doesn't succeed. But we can't have another season of, well, I don't trust him and he's on the bench and 7 million quid a year. So, I'm not saying you're right or wrong, but I'm saying I haven't seen enough of Chiesa in a Liverpool shirt to really know, to write him off or to big him up enough. I know I'd like to, though. I'd like to see more of him in a Liverpool shirt. Certainly feels like he wants to play for the shirt. Craig Peter said, Hugo gave me Bobby Firmino vibes. That goal to me was a big bag of Bobby Firmino. The way he hit it, kind of side foot, half volley, passed it into the net. I can definitely see some Bobby Firmino-esque bits there. Obviously a bit of a bigger frame, but I totally get where you're coming from, Craig. I reckon they might not rush into like somebody replacement for Isak. Can see them pocketing the Isak money and go for somebody in January. Cool. Ishan, if it gets us Isak, mate, I'm good. All I want to see at this point from us is that offer to go in. Because if the offer goes in, at least we know Liverpool are trying to move the situation along and make that decision, because we can't just keep going on and on and on and on and on. We are now heading through the last 2 weeks of this transfer window. And as Liverpool fans, depending on who you speak to, we need minimum one defender, minimum one forward, maybe two. And when I say one defender, by the way, sorry, what I mean is clarity around Guéhi or Canade. That's what I mean. There's still too much uncertainty there for me. Giovanni Leone coming in gives us that extra body, no problem with that. But we still need to know the definitive futures, because I'm not going to feel comfortable personally going into a new season with Canade running down a deal to leave. I just don't believe his head will be in the right place for the season. And again, we're going to see so much written in the media about his impending move to wherever. So it's either new deal or we sign Guéhi and, move him on. Or at least bench him. Something along those lines. This one. Why was Semenyo not in the lineup today for Palace? Because he plays for Bournemouth? At a guess. Unless you've got confused and you're thinking of somebody else. But Antoine Semenyo played against us, scored 2 against us yesterday. Again, I think you've got yourself confused on something there, mate. Embrace said, much love for the channel. Thank you. Appreciate your support as a member as well for 6 months. Thank you very much. What did Guéhi do? I don't understand blank. Sorry, Matt. Sorry. So at the end of the game, Mark Guéhi was like closer, let's say, to the tunnel and was walking away, and Oliver Glasner was kind of centre circle walking towards the tunnel, and it was only them two really in this scene, and you could see Oliver Glasner call his name 2-3 times, and Mark Guéhi nothing, and then Oliver Glasner kind of turned and I want to say shrugged his shoulders, but made a pretty clear indication that okay then. So yeah, sorry mate, that's what I meant by blanked. Why sell Doak? We don't need money, we need depth. Look, I said all summer and even before that I've always been under the impression that there was never a long-term future for him at Liverpool. I remember speaking to David Lynch about this a year ago, And the thought process even then was very unlikely we see him coming in to the team. And quite honestly, I'm surprised it's gone this late in the window before somebody made a big play for him. Yeah, look, we don't. It's not a money thing, but I have to say, I do want us to move on players that don't have futures at the club. You know, rather than just sending these guys out on loan perennially. We brought them for 600k. We've played 10 times in the Premier League for Liverpool, and we're about to get £25 million for him. So there's two ways of looking at it. You can look at it and say, well, he's another young up and coming attacker that we could use, which is a valid point. But if the manager doesn't want to, and what's the point in just keeping these guys when you can bring 25 million quid in, and it does free up some wiggle room. Where are we at with this one? Yanis said Robertson was a fault for the goal as per Slaw. So Yanis, which goal was this, mate? Robertson was a fault, in my opinion, for the first goal, the one that Canade had to try and cover the space on the right-hand side, and Robertson didn't communicate with Virgil. When Semenya was coming in late, Virgil had his man. So if that's the one you're talking about, no problem. But the second goal, the problems came where, one, Mohamed Salah gave the ball away, and then two, he just walked straight away through. So, for that goal, the one where he ran from one half to the other, I'm at a loss to figure out how you can blame Andy Robertson for that one. But, that's my take on it anyway. Malcolm said, Craig, great content. Do you think Salah needs a backup? Keep up the great work. Of course, nobody should be without a competitor or a competition for their place in the team. And we're at a stage now where most of that attack doesn't really have competitors for their places. So that's why we need to beef it up a little bit. We've let go players who maybe we should have let go, particularly with Darwin, but we also haven't seen enough bodies brought back in to replace them. So for all the stellar big money signings, it's also a numbers game. And last year there was a few reports to say the reason Chiesa was brought in was because Arne was so adamant he wanted 6 attackers, 2 for each position. I don't think we have enough depth there just yet. Florin said, definitely bought the best striker after seeing Sesko and Gyökeres. Thoughts? So I've always been somebody who said no to Victor Gyökeres. Always, repetitively on the channel said no. For the very reasons Liverpool wouldn't look at him. Doing it over in Sporting Lisbon, and yes, he's played at Coventry, and yes, he plays with the Swedish international team, but it is a big difference to doing it in the Premier League. And I was never convinced. And do you know what? I'm going to be honest with you, Florin. I was relieved when he's who Arsenal went for. I would have been way more concerned if Arsenal brought in somebody like Sesko, who I think over time will develop into a good player. Maybe Arsenal didn't feel like they had the patience or the time there to maybe have a project type striker, but certainly didn't concern me when I heard they bought Victor Gyökeres. That was a bit of a relief, in all honesty. Now, I've seen some Arsenal fans on social media with massive levels of copium trying to say that if Isak had have had an opportunity to go to Arsenal, it would have been Arsenal over everybody, and the only reason that he didn't sign for Arsenal was because Arsenal don't have the money, blah, blah, blah. Cool, whatever. But it's a moot point because he's not going to be at Arsenal. He wants to come to Liverpool, and we do have the money. Interesting. So we asked who's going to be our biggest problem this season. 76% of you guys think it's going to be Manchester City. Wow. Definitely colour me surprised on that one. I'm still of the mindset it'll be Arsenal. I just don't see enough in that City team yet. Looking at them yesterday, and look, Wolves are a poor side, let's be honest. So they should be putting them to the sword, but yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Look, as I said, it is genuine intrigue for me to see what people were thinking. So thank you so much to everyone that did vote in it. TOTT 2KZ1, how are we, sir? 25 months with the best Liverpool channel on YouTube. Hope you and the family are well, mate. And don't forget to like and subscribe, everyone. Thank you, bro. Appreciate you, Wayne. 25 months. It is crazy. Time really does fly along, dude. Thank you so much for being with us again. The Copite said City looks strong, honestly. Look, I'm not trying to say that they're bums, mate, or anything like it, but, just looking at the 11 yesterday and then glancing at their bench, I can't say it was an 11 that scared the shit out of me, but Reiner's good signing, good player. Haaland's going to bag goals, we know that. But, maybe I've read this very, very wrong, and maybe I look at the Manchester City situation and the uncertainty and the stuff hanging over the heads about the points and stuff, and I just wonder. But it's very clear that I'm in the minority here, and people feel like it's Man City. So either way, it is shaping up to be a very competitive and interesting Premier League season. Keith said, I think Liverpool need to put some pressure on Newcastle and Palace, put a deadline on Isak and Guéhi because the clock is ticking and we need bodies. Agreed. Here's what I can't understand, Keith. There's some coverage, quite a bit actually, that suggests that Crystal Palace would rather lose Mark Guéhi for free than sell him for 5 or 10 million quid less than they want. And it's not just one outlet that have covered this. I've seen loads of them. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. Mark Guéhi is more likely to make the move to Liverpool next year rather than this summer, said Football Insider. Crystal Palace are said to be refusing to budge on their, well, this is in euro, so let's say £45 million valuation. And it's suggested that could prevent the deal from being reached before the window closes. Am I missing something really blatantly obvious here, or is that just the height of stupidity? 40 million or 35 million is better than nothing. And Mark Guéhi to Crystal Palace isn't going to be the difference like it would be maybe to a top club like us of a Champions League campaign or qualification or not. I don't get it. I just don't get that thought process or the ability for Steve Parrish to just turn down money. Feels mad to me, and I can't see a world where he does that. He even said it himself. Steve Parrish came out to camera and said, we can't let a player like Mark Guéhi leave Crystal Palace for free. So the whole thing feels very fucking weird to me. At some point he's going to have to take less money. So let's start testing him with an offer. Now, there is a report that suggests we're going to go back in tomorrow. Romano said that Liverpool is the club that Mark Guéhi wants, and there's another report to say that Liverpool are going to go back in tomorrow to start negotiating, but I don't know. Shane said, genuinely don't know how we didn't win today. I've been there as a Liverpool fan, Shane, and seen us bang down the goal and not score, but you didn't. And 220 million quid worth of attackers at home. And granted, Sesko didn't start the game, but still no way through. Genuinely don't know how we didn't get a result today. We were the better team. Cunha and Mbeumo, very positive. De Ligt was superb, which won't be mentioned by the media because he doesn't have a British passport. So I did watch the game, Shane. I'm not going to lie and say I didn't. I absolutely did. I do think Mbeumo was a handful, and there were some moments from Cunha that I understand where you're coming from. But there's still deficiencies in that United team. The goalkeeper is dog shit. He is. I'm sorry. The way you're still looking to play out from the back, I don't think you have the personnel right across the team to be able to do that without having errors over the course of the season. And ultimately, Shane, here's I guess my final point. Every time it doesn't work out for United, and it doesn't matter what manager it is, it always seems to be, let's just go direct, bring Harry Maguire on and lump it up to the big lad. That's it. And that should concern you as a United fan. Because look at a Pep Guardiola team. Look at a Liverpool team. They still try to structure the way they attack, even at the very death. And yes, they bring on more attackers. And yes, they try to pen teams in. But they don't go as direct as United tend to go over and over and over and over. And I still don't see a pattern of play in that Manchester United team. I still don't see a rhythm in that Manchester United team. It feels like the tag of Moments FC hasn't gone away yet for me. But I agree with you on De Ligt. I do agree with you on De Ligt. I thought he was very good for you today. We can spend over 100 million on Verts and 100 million on Isak, yet we can't pay the extra 5 million to Guéhi. Sometimes some of these decisions baffle me, mate. You're right, we need a player and get him in. I agree. It baffles me as a fan as well. Especially when you've sold so well this summer. We've gone over 200 and something million quid now in sales. Stevie Boy said, what is Liverpool's plan B if Isak deal doesn't happen? Do Liverpool have a plan B? Let's ask that, because I'm coming into the stream tonight, Stevie Boy, unaware of what that might be. So one sec. Right, so do you think we have an Isak plan B? Because at this point, mate, I'm at a loss to figure out what the fuck it might be. Even like if somebody turns around to me and says, yes, Craig, the plan B is Rodrigo. Well, leaving yourself a week or so to do that feels like a lot of work for a contract that I'm sure would be a difficult enough contract to sort out. So, unsure, mate, what the plan B is or whether there is one. It feels like we are taking a very, very, very big risk that we will get Isak this summer. Because if we don't, and we don't have time to get somebody else in, we have absolutely shot ourselves in the foot. Going into a season with Salah, who's going to the AFCON, Ekitike, who is looking good, Gakpo, and a Chiesa. Not enough, just nowhere near enough. We need very minimal one more. We should buy Semenyo. I think, from what my understanding is, one of the problems around Semenyo would be his age. Now, I'm not saying it would be a be-all and end-all thing, but if you look at the type of players that we usually go for, about 25 is about that sweet spot for a player who's had experience before coming to Liverpool. And I think Semenyo's 26 or 27 now. I might be wrong on that, but very good player, no doubt about that. Yesterday, you seen him powerful, direct, strong running. Yeah, good player, but no chance after the new deal he signed as well at Bournemouth that you're getting him out. Oh, he's 25, is he? I thought he was a little bit older than that. Okay. I thought he was a year or two older than that. So 25, yeah, that's the right age bracket. No argument on that one. But I guess the signing of that new contract that he did earlier on in the summer, unless there's a release clause or something in that, but he's a good player. Like, he's a big, strong. He came from Bristol, right? Bristol City, if I remember correctly, when he went there. But that new deal probably, makes that incredibly difficult. Didn't like that City's two new lads scored. Well, our new lad scored as well, mate. So, think about it that way, Jack. Yes, they did score, and Reinders looked very good. But our new boy scored as well, so, it's always upsides to it. Liverpool the Bomb said, I'd rather go with Virgil and Leone as a partnership now. Canade's mind's not here at Liverpool anymore. I rather want a player who wants to give 100% for Liverpool. I'm the same, mate. Absolutely. I'm the same. I don't trust the Canade situation unless he signs a new deal, because whatever's going on, he hasn't looked right. And I'm not going to say it's just down to the deal. It could be down to the Diogo situation. It could be down to the uncertainty around his future. Could be down to the two new fullbacks as well. There are loads of things that I think combined together give us this headache. But I do know I don't want to sit here as a fan for another season reading about Madrid every week in the media and one of our players, because it's tiresome. Our backup to the front three is Rio, Dan's, Chiesa. That's poor. It is. I don't think anybody can put up an argument. Especially for the reasons that, one, Dan's hasn't proved he can stay fit long enough. Two, Rio seemingly isn't yet fully trusted by the manager, as has been shown over the past two games where he hasn't been brought on when maybe we need something. And Chiesa, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. Again, limited minutes, but at least you have the experience with him that you can think, okay, give him a few weeks, let him get into a rhythm, and maybe he is a decent option. And I guess also with Chiesa, you have the versatility of him being able to really play across that front three. Luis Guides said thoughts on Guéhi ignoring Glasner. It really did it really did stand out to me, mate. Yeah. Like I've tried to say before, being on the autism spectrum, I've spent my entire life trying to read body language and pick up little cues and gestures with people when I'm speaking to them. And you couldn't ignore Glasner's body language when he didn't get a response from Mark Guéhi. It was really clear, and the disappointment was etched all over his face and body. So, don't know what happened in the dressing room. Don't know if they're falling out over the transfer situation. Really don't know, but you cannot ignore that body language. It was pretty abundantly clear, wasn't it? The Copite said, if we miss out on Isak, we really need a backup striker. What happened if Ekitike gets injured? Mate, you're preaching to the choir. No doubts. I wouldn't necessarily say a striker, by the way. I would say we need another forward. A striker would be preferable, but Gakpo could play centre at a push. But yeah, I still think your point's more than valid. Where was I at? Think Leone was the reason we didn't sign Yarrow? No. Well, I say that, sorry, but I can't say that with any certainty. No, because had he even really started making senior appearances at Parma at that point? Now, look, I guess from another aspect, Richard Hughes has a fantastic set of contacts in Italian football. I think he played in the Atalanta youth system himself when he was growing up. I remember when Richard Hughes was coming to Liverpool reading up about it, and his father worked in Italy for Penguin Publishing or something like that. So he has great understanding, knowledge and contacts in Italian football. So I might be doing him a disservice there, mate. Did you see what the Geordies were chanting after the match? Eddie Howe's starting to seem fed up with the situation. Next week could be very interesting. I didn't know. I'd heard Eddie Howe's comments, but I didn't hear what their fans were singing, mate. But quite honestly, I'm getting sick of the coverage of this, and a very one-sided coverage of it in the media as well. Everybody and their dog is vilifying Isak, who hasn't spoken once publicly about this. And like I said, I read a story earlier on that was speaking about the situation for Utara. And it said, Bournemouth were reluctant to sell, but after Utara made it clear he wanted to leave, they had no option but to allow him to go for a price they felt was fair. Really? How is that different to, let's say, Visa at Brentford, Isak at Newcastle, who told him he wanted to go? Why all of a sudden with Bournemouth is it, they had no choice, had to sell him for a huge fee? Well then, surely the same applies to Isak. Sell him, have to sell him, record fee. Different coverage though, right? So, every day, even match of the day last night, they couldn't help it. Shearer and Rooney had to sit there and have a pop and had to sit there and talk about him. Somebody should have told Alan Shearer to concentrate on who was actually on the fucking pitch when he was complaining about Kirkhead's been out of position for a goal that he wasn't on the pitch for. Maybe stick to that before going into moaning about Isak again. It keeps being forgotten about. That, yeah, it's not great. It's not a good look, and I'm not trying to say it is. But if I was at a football club and I'd been told for a year I was getting a new deal, and I'd been told that new players were coming in and around me, and all these promises just didn't happen, and I told the club in good time I was going to leave, so they had plenty of time to go out there and get a replacement, and they didn't. Gary said Chiesa is a winger. You might want to reevaluate that, Gary, and have a little look at his Juventus record, because he played most of his games there centrally. Now, he thinks of himself as a winger, but his history in football, particularly with Juventus, shows that he was more of a central striker there, although if you ask him directly, he would say he's a winger. Jack said, yeah, I don't get that. Why Palace would have him go for free? It makes no sense. Take 5 or 10 million less than you want now, or get nothing in a year's time and still have to replace him. The whole, again, narrative around that just seems nuts to me. Just absolutely nuts. Chad, how are we, dude? Lovely to see you, bro. Said, hey, Craig, Arsenal has a serious bench. They are deep. I don't think they have they are better than Liverpool, but sure would be nice to bring in a couple more players, Guéhi and Isak preferably. Yeah, so Arsenal are a well-stocked squad. Don't have much depth through the centre as a striker, Chad, as of course we found out, and they brought in Gyökeres, who, let's see how he gets on. I think we need a little bit of context on our bench as well, because as we get some players back, the likes of Bradley, and we do bring in that extra striker, I think the bench will start to look a little bit more stacked. But certainly, if you're just looking at ins and outs this summer, it seems to be a lot more going out the door than is coming in. Now, some of that I'm okay with because it's just players that aren't really going to make it at Liverpool. But certainly two this next 2 weeks is minimum. Two signings minimum, or we are in trouble, in my opinion, over the course of a long season. Daniel said, hey Craig, any chance Guéhi or Leone can play left back? Connor already had hamstring issues. You mean right back? I think you mean right back, because left back we have plenty of cover on. At the moment we've got 3. You've got Kirkes, you've got Robbo, and obviously you've got Costas, and Joe can play either side as well as a full back. But the issues that you're speaking about with Bradley, it's a fair point, and it's a concern I think many Liverpool fans would have. They never seem to be long injuries, Daniel, do they? But they are consistent and worrying, because, now the manager is just able to rely on Frimpong, who's new through. So it'll be interesting to see if Conor Bradley was available, would he have started, as an example, yesterday? I think he probably would, because he'd understand the league a little bit better. Austin said, this window started out amazing, but I'm sick of the media vilifying us when they were the ones banging on about us net spending, but now it's a problem. It makes me laugh, mate, when I look at some of the coverage in the media and who's saying what and why and when. I agree. It has been very vitriolic is probably the word I would use from some people. And again, the hypocrisy of this situation with Newcastle fans, happy to see Visa walking away from training and stuff at points. And, one thing that I'm not sure about, and I'd love to get an answer on this, is, so last night I'd seen Shearer and Rooney saying that Isak's refusing to train. No, he isn't. Isak's there training every day, 3:30, 4 o'clock, when the other players are going home. So we can put that nonsense to bed first. He's also over in Spain training at Sociedad. It wasn't Isak's decision not to play him up against Celtic, was it? Because that's kind of where this whole shit show snowballed from. Eddie Howe and Newcastle had a miscommunication over why he didn't play up there. Then, of course, it was, well, his head isn't right, so I'm giving him space. And then he didn't go on the pre-season tour. The situation just kept snowballing and snowballing. And every chance Newcastle could have had to try and build a bridge, they didn't. They burned it to the ground. The family barbecue, when they came back, easy chance to get him in transition and back in. Nope. But again, he hasn't said anything. We've only heard one side of this and the Newcastle fan side of it. And of course, both of those are going to serve and look after Newcastle's interests, which is understandable. Stargirl said last year's surprise team was Forest. I think Sunderland might surprise people this year. Who do you think might surprise us? Definitely agree with you last year on Forest, because if anybody last season said they were a potential relegation candidate, I don't think any of us could have said that's a terrible show, but they had a great season. I don't know what to make of Sunderland, because I don't know enough about a lot of their signings. Obviously, a 3-0 win opening day of the season is fantastic. But West Ham are horrendous. It's just really not great. I'm not trying to take away from Sunderland, who looked like they were full of energy and the place was rocking. I mean, the atmosphere up there was absolutely brilliant. Who's going to be the surprise team? Um, Spurs, maybe. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Spurs to be the, if you can call it, surprise team. Shane, how are we, dude? Hubba Hoskin said Gordon refused training and handed in a transfer request to force his move to Newcastle. Just thought you should know. Happy 3 months. Much love. Thank you. And Shane, right back to you. I know, but these things don't get mentioned. You know, it's easy to just stick the boot in on big bad Liverpool, isn't it? Which everybody, a lot of the media seems to be more than happy to do. Scotty reckons maybe Leeds a surprise team. It'll be interesting to see how they get on against Everton tomorrow night. That'll be a good measure for Leeds of life back in the Prem. Double L Lions, that I think Spurs will get top 4. It's, yeah, I mean, look, it's really early days to start making a prediction on who gets top 4, but I think there's only one place up for grabs. I'd be amazed if you're not talking about a top 3 in some order of Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, and then after that, you know, it'd be your Chelseas, your Spurs, maybe Newcastle's. Yeah, tough one. I certainly wouldn't be putting any money on it just yet. Crypto 2021 said the league could be a cakewalk. Well, we need to get our shit together a little bit first, you know. We got a win, which is great, but I will feel a lot more comfortable giving an opinion after the Newcastle game, because this is the first test of the season and it is a proper test for various reasons. Can we go there, play like champions, silence the crowd, keep our heads, get the result and move on with everything that's going to be thrown at us that day? I'll be very interested to see who the PGMOL put in charge of the game. Very interested to see who's going to be on VAR for the game. But this is a big, big test. And if we can come through this with a win, it's a great sign for the season. Because even at the best of times, without any shenanigans between the two teams, Newcastle away under the lights is a tough game. Brad said, I'm really intrigued for next Monday's crowd. It's going to be mad. It is. It's going to be mad, Brad. Which is why in my team selection I'd be veering towards experience for this one, especially on the left side with Andy Robertson. He has to start for me. Ken said, well, not the real Ken Barlow, but Ken said, what did you think of City yesterday? The new midfield they signed from AC Milan looks really good. Oh yeah, Reiner's look good. He's a solid, strong, physical player, very Pep Guardiola-esque, has an eye for a goal as well, as we've seen. But honestly, when I looked at their starting 11, I mean, I'll get it up now so we can talk back through it a little bit. But so this was Manchester City's starting 11 yesterday. Trafford in goal, meh. Lewis at right back, John Stones, Diaz, and Ait-Nouri. I mean, it's a good back 4, but it's not, you know, making me shit myself. Midfield, Reinders and Nico Gonzalez. Not convinced by Nico Gonzalez. Reinders going to be a good, solid player. But obviously Rodri does have to come back in. Then Oscar, Bob, Bernardo Silva, Jeremy Doku and Erling Haaland. That didn't worry me too much. Obviously Marmoush was on the bench, but I don't know. I could be massively underestimating this City team, but they just don't scare me at the minute. They was missing Foden and Rodri. Yes, I'm aware of that, mate. I did just mention that they were missing Rodri, but if you look at Foden, there was a lot of time last year he didn't play either, and certainly wasn't in the best of form. You know, and he said himself he's been exhausted. So, you know, these are things I take into account, but I also think other people don't take into account the points thing. You know, the 130 charges thing. That is still going to come to fruition at some point this season. They did play in the Club World Cup. You know, all of these things taken into account, I just don't see it being as straightforward a season for Man City as maybe some others do. The City versus Spurs game next weekend is going to be entertaining, said Caelan. Yeah, it will. there's a few good games coming up early doors in the season. Obviously, us at Newcastle, then us against Arsenal. Arsenal have actually, there's a lot of tricky opening, say 7 or 8 games for City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. It's a tricky start for all of us. David said, "What's annoying me is Visa has pushed for a move to Newcastle. Gyökeres pushed for a move to Arsenal. The hypocrisy because we're going for Isak." I know. See, here's what happens, David. Everybody else that isn't Liverpool fans now are absolutely scared shitless that we get Isak. So if we can acknowledge that as grown-ups, then we start to see why that hypocrisy is there. You're right. I don't remember any of this bullshit when Gyökeres was refusing to train at Sporting and, talked about broken promises. That was all fine. Nobody had much to say on it. But as soon as the situation with Isak comes around and it's Liverpool, like you've said, mate, very different energy. Very different energy around Yo and Visa. But again, I take these things as a compliment because it shows they're all shit scared. Even look at yesterday. We got to 2-2 straight away. An extra 2,000 people into the chat immediately because they're like, all right, Liverpool have a little weakness now. Let's pile on in there to make sure that we become as destabilising a force as possible. I love it. This is the level of shithousery that makes me smile because all this noise is for a reason. You don't talk this loudly and this often about a team that you're not worried about. So I see it as people basically just letting us know that they're shitting themselves. Where are we at? Dean said, starting to feel a bit fooled with the early signings to sweeten us up for falling short at the end of the window. I'd be a liar, Dean, if I told you I wasn't a bit nervous, mate, but, I can't help but feel that there has to be something we don't know about. Because why would you continue to sell players? So Doak is an example. Diaz. If you didn't know that you definitely had a very gettable player. So I understand, and I'm not FSG's biggest fan, but they have done well at the start of the window. Some situations are out of our control, like Isak at the minute, but the centre-back one, that we can control. And here's what rationally I don't understand. As Liverpool fans, we've known that Canade was out of contract all through last season and to now. So Richard Hughes had the situations with Mohamed Salah, Trent and Virgil last season. They were then sorted out, and we've had all summer up until now to figure out what Canade wants to do. And we have 2 weeks till the transfer window closes, and we still seemingly don't know whether he's going to sign a new deal or not. There has to be a time frame here. There has to be a line in the sand to say, too long, sorry, we move on. Nobody's going to convince me that Canada going into the season without a new deal, running down his contract, is going to be good for the season. Nobody's going to convince me of that. He's going to be up and down, and it's going to be a destabilising factor, and it's something that we can control and nip in the bud by bringing in his replacement. So if we bring in Mark A, honestly, don't really care what happens then with Canade and the noise around him, because we have replacement there and we have a good enough player to come in and play alongside Virgil. And obviously Leone and Joe Gomez on top of that. Darwizzy said, did anybody see in social media the rival fans were slating Wirtz? Of course. Again, you know why? Because they're scared. They're not out there slating Leone. They're not out there slating Frimpong. They're slating the big money signing that they know is going to come good, but didn't score a hat-trick in his first week, therefore, So if they want to play that game, well then, how's Victor Gyökeres getting on there, boys? Your big signing that you waited how many years for as a striker? Old Trafford today, was he on the pitch? Because he did fuck all, if he was. So if you want to talk about big signings not hitting the ground running, well, ta-da! Ibu needs competition and Wirtz needs time to adapt. Definitely. Wirtz will be good. Yesterday, all the things I needed to see from Florian Wirtz were there. But what wasn't there was the speed of thought and presence of mind for the pace of the league. And that will come with repetition. And, for all the preseason games and training, you can't imitate the intensity of a Premier League game. So that will come. And it'll be very interesting to see whether he goes with Wirtz from the start against Newcastle or whether he maybe thinks to himself, right, let's go with Gravenberch, McAllister and Szoboszlai, who know what to expect here. And maybe then if we need a little bit of magic or we need to unlock something, maybe we get Wirtz on later. That's one decision that I'm very intrigued to see what Arne does. Lee, thank you, mate. Mike said, love Wirtz, but would be tempted to play Grav, Szoboszlai, McAllister in midfield at Newcastle for the physicality, then bring Wirtz on against tired legs on 60-70. Also could do without Joelinton crippling him. Yeah, I honestly hadn't read that just before I said what I said a moment ago, Mike, but totally understand that thought process as well. Like I said, we need to understand what we're going to walk into next week, and we need to be mentally and physically prepared for that. And part of that might be, tried and tested Premier League, know what they're doing, know what to expect. Not a knock on Wirtz as a footballer, but sensible. So I would have no complaints if next week he puts out the midfield and it's Gravenberch, McAllister and Szoboszlai and it's Andy Robertson at left back instead of Milos Kerkez, because I think that will be sensible. And like you said then, Mike, tired legs, maybe a bit more space for Wirtz, maybe the game stretches and maybe it becomes more impactful to bring him off the bench. But after that, I'm starting to say, no, now let's keep him in the team. But I totally get where you're coming from for that one next week. If this was a home against Newcastle, I'd probably still go with Wirtz. But yeah, away at a very hostile territory, I can see where you're coming from. I wouldn't play Wirtz next week. Need Dom strength, said Stargirl. And also you could play Wirtz on the left wing instead. Well, let's ask that. Let's ask, because a couple of people have brought it up there in a row. So we said, do you think there's a plan B for Isak? 63% of you guys said no. So let's ask this one. Okay. Okay, so should Wirtz start against Newcastle? And I've given you three options. Yes, he should start in midfield. Yes, but on the wing. Or no, bench him to start with. So three options. Start him in midfield, start him on the wing, or no, start him from the bench. Lee said, I think Virgil is as much to blame for our defence. So he's not without fault, Lee. That's fair. Sometimes it depends on what situation we're speaking about. So if we go back to the Community Shield and we talk about the goal that came down Virgil's side, if you look at that, for me, I have a memory of Frimpong being a little bit too deep and the defensive offside trap not working when they stepped up. So that's one part we can work with repetition. And again, I want my centre-backs leading that line and telling them when to hold, when to step up. This being too cool for school shit and not making a tackle as well, that annoys me, Lee. And ultimately, he's the captain and the leader of the defence. Now, he can't do it all himself, but it's his job to marshal it and to talk them through the game. Joseph said, you don't play 100 million for the best young talent in Germany bench because of one shaky game. It's got fuck all to do with one shaky game, Joseph. Certainly not for me anyway. I'm saying you don't start him for the very reason I'm saying you don't start Kerkez. Experience. going into a hostile environment in what's going to be a physical battle. So it's not about not trusting him. It's about being sensible and going up there and saying, right, nothing stupid, first 10, 15. We need people who are going to understand what the game's going to be about, the physicality of it. So it's not like, oh, well, let's chuck him in the bin. I don't think that's a rational answer from anybody. But, you know, it's about getting the result ultimately. And we aren't going to be able to put out the same 11 every single week all season. There's going to be changes. Oh, I've already done that one from Lee. He also gains experience by playing. Yes, he does. Like, you act like everything is matter of fact and there is no grey area and everything isn't tinged in opinion. Literally every conversation we have on here is based off all of our opinions. And not everything I say is a matter of fact, not everything you say is a matter of fact. But what I don't think is up for debate is that he wasn't up to the pace of the game yesterday. And that was at home against Bournemouth, where there was a lot of space. Not Joelinton in there trying to snap him in half, or the crowd screaming at him from every angle. So, again, let's be realistic about it. Sometimes players take a bit longer to settle into a league, and you don't know that before you buy them. So, Ekitike probably settled in a little bit quicker than I expected. But, again, I'm not writing Wirtz off and won't write him off. It takes months for some people to come in and get used to the way that we play. Just look back to other signings. Andy Robertson's a really good example. How long was it before Kloppo even started to think about Robertson? And yes, we did pay a lot of money for Wirtz, but that doesn't take away the human aspect of it. That it is still a new league, a new environment, new players around him. You know, these things have to be taken into account. John Joe, how are we, dude? And thank you so much, mate. Very kind. Really appreciate that. So, good evening, Craig. Happy about Chiesa. Feel sorry for Rio. I feel like he proved himself pre-season. Keep up the good work. Defence was shocking against Bournemouth. Do you think Monster... who's this? Futures is causing him to play below par. I don't know. I don't know who Monster is. Yeah, I'm not sure who Monster is. John Joe? Yeah, Monster. Canade. Is that who we're talking about? Look, I'm not sure what is causing him to be below par, John Joe, but he is. And, you know, I wondered yesterday, was it just us as a start, you know, talking about him and thinking, was it just us thinking maybe he was off? But then you look at Carragher and you look at some of the other pundits and you look at the media, and a lot of people are writing that he was all over the place. And look, again, it's not just one thing. You know, let's not forget about Diogo and the weight and the impact that this had on those players. So, could be a whole host of things, mate. Could be his future, could be Diogo, could be new teammates in and around him that he's not used to on either side, but can't argue that he hasn't been good enough. And we don't have a long time to figure out whether that's a short or long-term problem because the window's shutting in 2 weeks. Red season depends on Wirtz or Isak. It depends on Grav, in my opinion. Excuse me, red season does not depend on Wirtz or Isak, said Peter. It depends on Grav, in my opinion. We'll be amazed if he's not hacked to bits on the field. Defo... Excuse me, I had a hiccup there. Defo mark to stop him. Well, look, we've seen over the past 2 weeks how different we are without Ryan Gravenberch. I think Maka played the role better than Curtis Jones for what it's worth, but still isn't Ryan Gravenberch. So yeah, there's no denying that. And this is why we had the same conversation all last season as well, about us being one injury from him away from a problem. Steve said, for me, Ibu needs to make up his mind by this weekend coming so we can move in for Guéhi. Yeah, look, I said it about Trent, and I'll say the same thing again. It doesn't take this long to make a decision. It doesn't, on what you want to do. If you want to be here, will you get down to the nitty gritty with about money and you make it clear, I'm not moving from this line. This is my number. I want this number. I'm not signing. So I said the same about Trent. Didn't buy for 1 second that Trent was still thinking all year, thinking it through. He knew what he wanted to do. He had his mind made up. And I have similar feelings about Canada. But what I don't know is what the club are going to do. Rogue Phantom said, Craig, as it stands, assuming we get Isak and Guéhi, what would your Liverpool bench look like? Really looking forward to what you say on this. So, off the top of my head, fast forwarding, let's say, to the Manchester United game on October the 18th or 19th. For that game, I would go... Let me just go back over your question because I wanted one part of it. Where was it? So Guéhi was in there. Okay. So I would go Bradley, Guéhi, Van Dijk, Kirkes, Gravenberch, Maka, Wirtz, Salah, Isak, Ekitike. That would be my 11 in that scenario where we signed Guéhi and Isak and everybody had a little bit of time to bed in and Isak got up to fitness. Yeah, that would probably be my 11. You can say to me, I want Szoboszlai in there. No problem. I agree. Very difficult to figure out the McAllister, Szoboszlai, Wirtz 2 into 3. Somebody has to miss out, so totally get that. Well, unless you want to move one of them further forward. But the front three is the interesting one for me because I would go Salah right, Isak central, and Ekitike off the left. Yeah, I feel comfortable with that one. But, you know, I also feel like we don't talk about the amount of goals Cody Gakpo contributes as well. You know, there are things that we think he can do better as a winger, but he does chip in with his fair share of goals. Underestimating Gakpo. Literally just fucking said about Gakpo, mate. Jesus Christ. You do realise this isn't a fucking opinion, right? When somebody says, hey Craig, what's your opinion? I give, shock horror, my opinion. And unless the rules of football has changed, I can't put more than 11 players on the pitch. So somebody has to miss out. And I don't underestimate anybody that plays for Liverpool Football Club. They play for our club for a reason, because they're good enough. So I'm not underestimating anybody. I'm giving you what I would do like I was asked to. Rogue Phantom said, appreciate your answer. I agree 100%. Gakpo lacks the ability to take on a player which Diaz does. And like you said, Ekitike provides that. Yeah, but I say that and I agree. But also, for the amount of times Gakpo obviously cuts onto his right foot, he still seems to get a shot away a lot of the time and still seems to find the space. I mean, the goal that he scored yesterday, or excuse me, on Friday night, if you look at that, how many times did he pause and then move and pause and then move and still got the shot away and still got the goal? And then there was another one he did that he could have got a shot away, but he unselfishly tried to square it off to Mo, overhit the pass and it went behind. But, you know, I guess it's like the whole Henry thing, isn't it? You knew what he was going to do, or Frank Ribery. You knew what they were going to do, but they did it. So best of luck stopping them. And Gakpo does chip in with his fair share of goals. K123 said, whatever people say about Gakpo being one-dimensional, nobody can deny his end product. 100%. One of his best attributes without any doubt. And also his ability aerially. Aerially is underestimated as well. But yeah, Gakpo is a very, very good finisher. Really good. Stop getting angry, bro. We type as we think. No, I won't. Like I said, I gave an opinion and you said I'm underestimating somebody. So don't tell me to stop getting angry. Stop being an idiot. You know, I'm not telling you what I'm saying here is a fact, but I'm answering a question of my opinion. And if you don't like what I'm saying, fuck off. In fact, I'll make it easy for you. Go. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to act. Don't tell me how to feel. I will decide how I feel and what I say and when I say it and how I react. Because you aren't in my shoes. You don't get the shit I get thrown at me all day, every day. So, you know, show respect, get respect. It's fucking simple and you'll learn it sooner or later. Very easy. I will never, ever have a pop at somebody who doesn't have a pop at me or try to be an asshole. And I'm not moving on that. It isn't changing. It hasn't changed in 8 years. It ain't going to fucking change in the next 8 years. Show respect or fuck off. Simple as that. I'll do the job that some of your parents are seemingly unable to do, which is teach you fucking manners. You know? It's not a hard concept to grasp. Respect is a minimum in life. It's a minimum in here. It's a minimum full stop. Show it, you receive it. Don't show it, bye-bye. It always baffles me. It's like asking for basic human decency is too much. Sorry. Not for me. I don't. Sorry, Liverpool 67. I'm trying to figure out this one, mate. You said, to be honest, Craig, sometimes why opinions scary, like Robbo over Kirkes. Oh, you're talking about no. So I'll try to explain my thought process on that one to you. Um, the reason that I would go for Andy Robertson over Kirkes away at Newcastle is just experience. You know, I'm not trying to say that Robbo hasn't got errors in him because, you know, we spent the whole of last season saying we need to get a better left back. We need to get more consistency. We haven't seen the same Andy Robertson. So, fair point that you said about errors there. And I just think that experience is going to be key because if we look at what we did see from Milos Kerkez was a very early yellow, which then put him up against pacey players for the rest of the game. And, you know, we couldn't have that against Newcastle away, especially with the pace that Newcastle have there as well. So that's why I was talking about the experience. I wasn't talking about Robbo not having a mistake in him. It's just for this particular game, you know, I just know what's coming our way with regard to the noise and the atmosphere and stuff. So that's why I'd go with Robertson. But your point about the mistakes is a fair one as well. Just for me, I'd edge with experience in this one. How much does it annoy you when people call you Greg? Not too much, to be honest. It is what it is. You know, Craig is a weird name anyway. So the Craig one gets me more. You know, when Americans say Craig, they say Craig. But nah, man, it's all good. People can mistype or put a name in wrong. It's all good. What I won't stand for, though, and I know people get their knickers in a twist about it, but honestly, I don't understand why this is such a big thing. How is it hard to be respectful? I'll never understand that because I don't just pick somebody out of a chat and have a go with them. I have a go with people who have a go, and people get their knickers in a twist about that because how dare he? That's rude. Why the fuck should I put up with it? I wouldn't put up with it for my own children. My parents wouldn't put up with it from me. So again, I never understand why this is a big issue with people. Maybe you can get away with it on other channels. Maybe other people don't give a shit what's written in their chat. I do. And I've always been this way from day one because I want you guys to feel like you can come in here and have fun. Let your hair down. Enjoy yourselves. And that starts with being respectful of me, each other, and the community. It is not a big thing. Just be respectful and we'll all get along fine. But I am never going to apologise for holding people to that standard. It's a minimum. Look at other people's YouTube chats. It's a shit show. And I couldn't do what I do looking at that level of chat. I couldn't. It would drive me insane because it's the part of the internet I hate. So whether you think I'm cutting sharp or not, I'm trying to explain to you why. And it all comes from basic levels of respect. We should all have it for each other. And like I said, I don't come on here and pick out a comment and go, "You're an asshole, you're a dickhead." I don't. I only do it when people are trying to undermine or belittle us. Simple as. And I'm never going to change. Wirtz will have his moment that flicks the switch. I would not drop him on match day 2 because he was average match day 1. So again, Padge, that's not why I would be putting him on the bench. For me, it's nothing about yesterday, mate. Although yesterday he wasn't up to the pace of the league yet, but that's okay. You know, new players coming in, you know, take different levels of time. Some look like they've been here forever. Others look like, you know, it takes them a bit longer. For me, it is just down to the experience of the environment and what's coming our way. And maybe I'm wrong, but my view on it would be I would just go for people who are a little bit more experienced on what's going to come our way next week, because it is going to be tasty to say the least. Yeah, it's going to take big personalities, and I'm sure Wirtz has that big personality, but you know, everything encompassed, I just think McAllister, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai to start anyway. But yeah, like I said, just an opinion. And I don't think he froze either. I just think there were times in possession yesterday that maybe had that little 1 or 2 seconds too long, and somebody nipped in behind him, took the ball off him, broke up play. It just felt like the rhythm, his rhythm, natural rhythm, which you can see he's a rhythm player in his body movements and the way he makes games tick. I just don't think it was there yet. But that's okay. No biggie for me on that one. Where are we? I know they got waxed, but how do you feel about Collins and Kelleher leading out Brentford? Really delighted. Look, the more Irish players we see in the Premier League, as an Irishman, you know, I'm going to be immensely proud. Kelleher, it feels like, has made a very difficult move this season with, you know, all the sales and change and upheaval at Brentford. Collins, I'm a big fan of as a defender, and I think, you know, he has a big move in his career. Now, the problem, I guess, comes with, I think he's 2 years into a 6-year contract, and if I'm not mistaken, I think there's an option of 2 more years in that contract for Brentford. So it would be a really difficult game to, or excuse me, difficult signing to get over the line. As much as I'd love him, I think with the way Brentford have been fleeced this summer, and, you know, again, about to lose another forward, I just can't see them wanting to get rid of their captain. Patrick said, "Craig, honestly, stay honest. Big up, top red, bro. Thank you." Look, I understand my stance on respect is divisive to some people, but I'm not for changing on it. And, you know, I'm not going to apologise for trying to have decency in the way that we go about this, because this is my only social media. I'm not on X, I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on anywhere else. This is my only interactions on the internet outside of our Discord group, and I'd like it to be pleasant for everybody. And that starts off with the tone from people coming into the chat, because it ruins it. It ruins the streams when arseholes come in and start trying to belittle us, the players, each other, me. It just takes away the enjoyment. I don't want to come on and stream, and I don't want to do it, so I want to keep it civil. Sheldon said Arsenal didn't look great, to be honest. So I kind of don't really disagree with what Shane said earlier on. United probably could have gotten something from that game and probably deserved to get something from that game based off the performance, but they didn't. And one thing for Arsenal is they kept a clean sheet there. And if you're keeping clean sheets, you've always got a chance. Again, ironic or funny, whatever word you want to use, that they scored from a set piece. And United's keeper was just weak as hell from that. You should be commanding your 6-yard box in that position and, taking out everybody that gets in your way. So he was really weak on that. But I don't know. I just think Arsenal have that continuity as well. That served us well under Jurgen. And a desire to not be second again. So, yeah, I'm not writing them off. I think they're going to be a problem this season, but I can't wait. Honestly, I'm so excited about the season we have ahead of us. There's so many twists and turns in it, and I think there's going to be a lot of points taken off each other. Suleiman said, after watching all the big games this weekend, I'm very optimistic about our chances of retaining the title, plus our football style is exciting. Yeah, it's always tough to read too much into the opening weekend or the opening set of games. Some teams will still strengthen in between now and the time the window shuts. But it gives you a snapshot, right? Of where we're at. And you can see a lot of positives for us and obviously some defensive frailties. But again, I think as we get into the rhythm, once we have the personnel to make the changes, so we do still need to add a couple. Yeah, I'm optimistic for the season ahead as well. Liquid said, Flo just needs to speed up his tempo and he's good. Yeah, just a half second, like I said, and he's good to go. Oh, look, here's another Newcastle fan trying to be funny. Is Núñez still better than Isak, Craig? Run a poll. Did the 8 or 9 comments you've left in other videos, mate, not enough for you? You had to come in and do it a 10th time. So clearly, obviously no, mate. Núñez is not as good as Isak, but you knew that, hence the reason you tried to put in your smart arse comment. So run a poll on that. I think you've got your answer. But again, like I said, imagine being such a sad little fuck that you've put that same comment on multiple videos just because you're so butthurt about losing Isak. It's okay. We'll treat him properly. He'll be happy at Liverpool and he'll be bagging in a load of goals. So you'll get to see him. And if it makes you feel any better, like I said, no, he's not as good. But you knew that. This is the type of simp I'm talking about. These little weirdos that just... Why didn't you go to a Newcastle stream tonight and have fun? It's just weird. It's just such a beta bitch behaviour that your only enjoyment comes out of being belittled. Is it a sexual thing? Is that what it is? Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I can understand it being sexual. Come on. Look at this. Do you know what I mean? I get it. But I'm not your dominatrix, so if you get your kicks that way, probably best you move on elsewhere, dude, because I don't want to take part in whatever sexual gratification you're clearly getting out of this. Watching from hospital. Battling vertigo. Oh, Ken, I feel for you, my man. Yeah, as I've had a closed tube in my ear for a while, and it's fucking up my balance a little bit. And nothing compared to what you must be going through with vertigo, Ken. So, yeah, appreciate you, and I hope you feel better soon. Cheyenne said, Craig, do you think the Saudis and the culture over there is the reason for the deal for Isak is difficult? They seem to be stubborn not to sell him as it stands. I wouldn't know. I don't know enough about Saudi culture to speak to the situation. Yeah, I don't know, honestly. Yeah, maybe somebody a bit more in tune with what Saudi deal making looks like would be able to speak better to it, but I don't know enough, to be honest. I don't know where to. There was a comment there, so I just didn't know where to go with it. James said, Craig, love the channel. You're great captain material. I'd run through a brick Geordie for you. Thank you, mate. Appreciate you. Tyler said, it's young kids, Craig. Trust me. Oh, I get it, mate. Absolutely. But again, the same young kids are then going, oh my God, he shouted at me and he's a big, bold, mean man. All I did was come in and call him a prick. And then he shouted at me. I mean, oh, you know, that's the shit. Like, it does my head in. You can get the little weird gratification elsewhere. This, you know, this is basic human decency time. Victor Gyökeres flicked his hair more than any other player on the pitch today, already breaking records in his Premier League debut. He really didn't look comfortable out there. And look, again, you don't want to read too much into one game at the start of a season, but is he going to be the answer to Arsenal through the centre as a number 9? I'd be very surprised. I really would. He'll score some goals, but will he be a 30 goal a season man? You know, I don't know, man. I don't feel it. The Isak deal could be already done and Newcastle have the money to buy. Maybe. I'd love that to be the case, dude. I would. There has to be some high degree of confidence from Liverpool because, you know, we've sold Darwin, we've sold Diaz, about to sell Doak. And we did all that, obviously, fully aware of the situation. So you'd have to imagine there's some confidence of a forward coming in somewhere. So here's one for you. When do you think we come back with the offer? Like, there's 14 days to go, roughly, in the window. When do you think we come back with the offer, the next offer to Newcastle? You know? Because I know we can keep saying, let's wait and see if Newcastle get a second striker or whatever, but like, let's say they sign a second striker with 2 days to go in the window. We can't wait it around that long because we've given ourselves nowhere to go at that point. So the psychology of this is very interesting to me as well. Darwizi said tomorrow or Wednesday, the last week of the transfer window, which is next week. This week coming, and then this last week after that. Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. After the Newcastle game makes sense as well. But I guess the real worry for me is what happens if it doesn't pan out. You know, because with Canada, we can say, well, whether we bring in Mark Guéhi or we sell Canada, we have a player here. We actually have a physical player. We don't have the numbers up top. So it's not like we'd make do with somebody. We just don't have it. And if we don't have enough forwards, we have done that to ourselves. And that will be really difficult to get my head around. Reese, thank you, mate. Appreciate you. Reese Emerson, thank you, sir. Colette reckons it's already done. Yeah, I don't think you're on your own there, Colette. You know, a lot of people I've spoken to are of that mindset as well, that there's some type of an agreement. And I get it, especially when you think about the relationship between Richard Hughes and Eddie Howe. You know, they go back a long way from their playing days together. So, you know, we totally get it. And then, of course, even before that, after that, they worked together with Bournemouth as well. So there's every chance you could be spot on with that. But I guess until we know that for a fact, always going to be a bit nervous. Johnny Brick said United did play well. They did, mate, certainly. But do you know what? They played well, but I still didn't see a pattern. I didn't see an identity, if that makes any sense. Now, again, one game, difficult to say anything, but still seemed to be they went behind and it was a rescue mission and they were hoping for a moment and they're lumping long balls up to Maguire. So I don't see an out-and-out identity that they understand, and I think passing out the way they persist on doing from the back is going to cause them issues this season, especially if you don't have a goalkeeper who's very good with the ball at his feet. Irish legend said, hey Craig, would you go for a diamond in midfield, to outpower them in the strongest area? Would also look Gomez at right back and Kirk as left back if he plays in midfield 3. Can definitely see the sensibility to what you're saying. So something like, just trying to think about this out loud, sorry. So are you saying something like having Wirtz and Szoboszlai on the pitch, Ekitike, Salah, leaving out a Gakpo, something like that? So your midfield's going to be like Gravenberch, Soboslai, Maka, maybe Wirtz in behind, and then not real width, very single. It's like a 4-2-2-2 kind of thing, or it's intriguing. It's intriguing to see what Arnon may do, because we definitely need to get on top of them in midfield. We also need to be aware of that lightning pace that they have in that team, because they're a fast team in transition, Newcastle. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from about maybe trying to overload the midfield and get that extra body in there, but are we giving up natural width in doing that? It'll be interesting to see. Four midfield, use fullbacks as width. Yeah, it's possible, especially if you've got Grav in there, who, if we are using whatever two fullbacks to advance up the pitch, you have Ryan dropping into almost splitting the centre backs again to go into a back three, which does then give you a bit more cover if we are exposed in one of the wide areas with a ball coming back in over the top. Yeah, I can see a way that might work. I can certainly definitely understand your thought process with it. Right, so poll that we have running at the minute is: should Wirtz start at Newcastle? Yes in midfield, yes but on the wing, or no, start him on the bench. Any transfer updates, said Saran Singh. Not really, mate. I mean, I'll run through a few stories here for you. 1 second, sir. So here's pretty much everything I have here on my notes. I do have other notes put aside for the late night news update video, but for these ones, Gazzetta Italia said Chiesa is now considered unsellable by Liverpool. Then we had Sasha Tavolieri saying Liverpool won't wait forever for Isak, and despite mutual interest, Liverpool have set a deadline on it. Let's wait and see on that one. Then we had the Daily Mail linking Liverpool once again with Nathan Collins, which, like I've said, with 4 years left on his deal and a 2-year option, and him just being made captain, and them looking vulnerable anyway, I think that would be a tough one to get done. The Shields Gazette reckon that visa to Newcastle will happen now that the situation for Utara to Bournemouth, or from Bournemouth to Brentford, is happening. So that would certainly ease Newcastle's striker concerns a little bit. Then there's multiple reports that the Doak to Bournemouth deal is pretty close to being announced. Football Insider said Mark Guéhi is more likely to move to Liverpool next year in a free rather than this summer. Fabrizio Romano, however, said Mark Guéhi wants to move to Liverpool. Sami Mokbel of the BBC said Mark Guéhi is expected to play for Crystal Palace against Chelsea today, which he did. Went on to say that Liverpool are about to recommence talks tomorrow for Mark Guéhi. So again, Sami Mokbel of the BBC, so certainly not a sensationalist journalist from a tabloid there. So let's wait and see what happens on that one. And then again, there was another link to Nathan Collins, and then there was really just a situation with Oliver Glasner being blanked by Mark Guéhi. So not the hugest of weekends from the transfer news front. Just wait for Brentford to be relegated and buy Collins. Yeah, maybe. He is a good player. And I remember when we discussed him earlier on in the summer, a lot of people were feeling a little bit unsure about whether he'd be good enough or not. I think he absolutely would be. So here's a stat from Virgil. No player in the Premier League won more aerial duels or won more duels this weekend than Virgil. 14 duels contested, 13 duels won. Still watched him and Canade, still watched Semenyo walk through the middle of them and score though. So, still not great. Good aerially within headers and stuff, yes, but dropping off, him and Canade still have issues that need to be addressed. Crosswell's Mercantile said, please read this as it's important. I will, sir, no problem. I think the only way Newcastle has a chance to become a big club is if they sell Isak and use the money to make a future-proof club. So, respectfully, it's not hardly earth-shattering breaking news, dude. We've said that multiple times. Newcastle have said that themselves in the past, that to take 2 steps forward, sometimes you need to take 1 step back. And, I agree with you for what it's worth. The sensible play for Newcastle here would be to let go of a player who, most importantly, doesn't want to be there, and take what would be a British record transfer fee and build out the squad and free up some PSR room as well for the future. So I agree. But as we sit here now, they're still stubborn and still haven't... Again, sorry to go back on this, but one thing that I don't see spoken about enough is they called us when the first Isak offer was rejected. They called us because they knew the situation was starting to become a problem. And then we made the offer, and it was the way that offer was rejected that seemingly surprised Liverpool and led to our stance of not going back in until we get some more encouragement. And that is nuts. If they engaged us about it and then £110 million offer was, probably would have been rejected. You can reject it and say, sorry, our valuation is more, but whatever was sent back was seemingly enough for Liverpool to go, okay then, well, we won't be back unless we get some encouragement. Matt said, Soboslai, Gravenberg, Jones, Monday. Jones has the Scouts' pride. I'm not sold on Jones personally. I'm not. He's okay, but I would still bench him. Kem said, Robbo can't start, mate. He's lost his pace and timing consistently, breaks defensive line, poor defensive positioning, and mistake prone. Kirkes is way better than he showed. He was trying too hard. Have you not kind of undermined your own point though, Kem, and made mine for me again? We've seen at home in a positive environment that Kirkes was a little bit too enthusiastic and a little bit too rash and picked up an early yellow. And that's the side of this that I'm focusing on, at least on my thought process about Robertson. There's no denying Andy Robertson, his best days are probably behind him, but I'd rather be cautious in here and even just sit a little bit deeper and not be tempted into a rash challenge or an early yellow, because we don't want the fullbacks coming up on an early yellow card with the pace of the likes of Anthony Gordon, Harvey Barnes, Alanga running at them. I want some experience there who won't get himself an early booking. So it wasn't a form thing for me. It was just an experience thing for this one. And the fact that it's a very tough away game. Sometimes I look back and I think often to what Sir Alex Ferguson did in some of the games where United went away in big Premier League games against Arsenal. And I remember looking at some of his teams and thinking, why has he gone for X or Y in midfield or here when he has better players on the bench? And it had to have been the experience and the calm heads, because sometimes in these big games, it's won in the last 25 or 30. You're grinding it out for the 60 and it's attritional. And then when things tire, you bring in the sprinkling of fairy dust maybe and win it late. So maybe that's gone into my thinking. Maybe I have overthunk it as well. I worry about Robbo up against Alanga. Well, I worry about Kirkes for the same reason. As in, if he picks up an early yellow away against Newcastle, he basically can't make any type of a challenge unless he's 100% certain for the whole game. But they're all hypotheticals, right? Because he hasn't picked up the early yellow yet. So, I'll trust Arna's judgment on it. But yesterday, I thought maybe just expose that little bit of naivety that's still in Kirkes as a young fullback. Gomez could be a good shout. Yeah, I've seen a couple in the chat mention Gomez. That could be a very steady shout, absolutely. Markovic said, Craig, I worry with our defence. We end up like Ange Spurs last season. Score goals but concede too many. Risky with the counter, such a high attack. So, I don't think we are going to be overly exposed, because if you think back to last season and one of the conversations that we often had, it was almost that we were too pragmatic with the ball and we were a little bit overly cautious in that we played it side to side more than taking the chances going forward. It almost felt like last season they were trying to correct but maybe overcorrected the protection of the ball. And then in the first game, what we'd seen was very much the other tail end of it. But how much of that was down to the excitability of the two newer, pacey, full of energy fullbacks, and how much of it was maybe poor use of possession in the final third. The one that really got me, that was Endo. He had been so far forward when we were winning. There was no need for the fullbacks to be that far forward. You're winning the game. You don't have to be busting the gut to make underlapping or overlapping runs to leave yourselves exposed. Just make sure you've got the cover. You've done the hard part and gone ahead. Kyle Cameron, how are you, mate? Appreciate you. Paddy says, you don't need to justify anything to trolls or ignorance, Craig. Don't always agree on every Liverpool topic, but what you've achieved in your story is unreal. Thank you. Appreciate you, mate. Look, I don't expect us all to agree, mate. That's no problem. But as yourself and myself have pointed out tonight on a couple of occasions, we can disagree and we can still have a respectful and often for me educational conversation, because I love hearing viewpoints that maybe I haven't thought of. But I'm blunt as a human, Padge, whether on camera or off camera, and I'm really big on respect. It's so important to me in life because it's the basis of everything we do. No respect, no concern about the repercussions of anything. We end up with a world kind of like we're seeing now, where people can do what the fuck they want and go online and think they can say what they want and abuse who they want, and there's no repercussions for it. That's not the internet experience that I want to have when I'm on here. So it hurts me when I see people going, stop being so angry and stuff in the chat. I mean, I think it's important that you realize where did the anger come from. Like, I didn't just jump in and start screaming at people. It bugs me that people don't put the context to the conversation of why, or tell me to just not bite on it. I go through hundreds of comments in a stream, and maybe 2 or 3 I bite on, but I don't know. It's just important to me, respect, because I treat people with it. Would Elise replace Salah, or would he play left wing? So the piece that I read the other day, I might still have it if you want me to go back over it, in case there were a few people maybe who didn't see this particular thing. 1 second. Because I found it fascinating reading this piece, to be honest with you. 1 second. Was it this one? Yeah, so it all came from an account. You've probably seen it on X on there, called Byron Space, and somebody screenshotted it and sent it to me. So reading this, I found it fascinating, and actually it all made a lot of sense to me, but doesn't mean it's necessarily true. So the piece read, I can reveal that Michael Elise has a release clause in his contract, first valid in the summer of 2026. Max Erbel agreed to its inclusion during negotiations with the players' representatives, convinced that without such a concession, he would have no realistic chance of bringing him out of the Premier League. In doing so, he accepted a figure comfortably within the reach for several English clubs, effectively ensuring that a return to England would remain a possibility. Inside Bayern, there's a clear expectation that Liverpool and Manchester City will be Michael Elise's preferred destinations should he decide to leave after the World Cup, once the release clause in his contract becomes active. Both clubs are long-time admirers who have followed his progress for years. Chelsea are also interested in him and were interested the summer before he joined Bayern. So basically, the gist of that was that there's a release clause in Michael Elise's contract that becomes valid next summer. And the piece said that we view Elise as a potential long-term Salah replacement. And if you just take those few little things on their own merits, if that release clause is there, if it does become active next summer, it would make a lot of sense to me that Liverpool would look to bring in Michael Elise, who would then be, I think, next summer 24, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 25. So right into that sweet age point where we know Hughes and Edwards like players to be. Will have had a career before his Liverpool career, a good career at Bayern Munich and Palace before. Will have been to a World Cup and gained invaluable experience there. And if, let's say, the release clause was for, I don't know, 80, 75, 80 million pound, it would make sense to me that we would look at him. Then you would have Elise, maybe Isak, Ekitike, Gakpo, absolutely future-proofing ourselves. So all of that made a lot of sense to me, but, like I said, it's one thing reading it and another thing it happening, but the more I thought about it, the more I actually got excited at the idea of Michael Elise becoming the Mohamed Salah long-term replacement in a year, 2 years' time. Even if it was 1 year where we had both of them at the club, and maybe then we started to integrate Michael Elise more over the season into Salah's position. I don't know, but I like the idea of it anyway. So, with 2,800 votes, you guys said that you would be starting Florian Wirtz in midfield against Newcastle. And thank you so much to everyone that did take time to vote. I do appreciate your thoughts. Crosswell's Mercantile said, I really think Gakpo on the pitch really helps merge the fast-paced style of the new players and the last year's style. He has loads of good attributes, Cody, definitely. So I wanted to just, before I finish up, highlight something yesterday. And I was so impressed with Mohamed Salah's goal for loads of different reasons. But one of them being how hard he worked to win that ball in the first place and the distance he covered at the end of the game to go from the right side to chase right across the back line to win the ball and then to finish it with his right foot the way he did. I think it was exceptional. And for a man that didn't have what we would all deem to be the greatest of games, because we know what he's capable of, still found a way with the emotion that he felt, with the pain that he was feeling, with the tiredness that he must have had at the end of the game, to be so professional and determined enough to run those hard yards in what could have been a lost cause and turn it into a goal. It was brilliant. Really, really, really brilliant. And I don't think it was spoken about enough or covered enough, because it would have been easy for him not to run it or to let the keeper come out and get it. But he didn't. And it's why Mo is Mo and why he is one of the best to do it. Really, really important moment in the game that really, I loved seeing it. And the finish was, lovely little right foot as well. Suleiman said, yep, I don't know how we got to that ball. Oh, it was incredible, because I think one of our other players maybe was offside, if I remember right, so couldn't go for it. And then Salah made that run full width of the pitch and, then had the presence of mind and wherewithal to slot it into the corner. His determination was really admirable, said Naturalist. He wanted that one for Diogo. Oh, on Naturalist, I won't use her real name. If that patch thing that we spoke about, the Premier League badge thing, is still an issue, as I said to you in the email, absolutely happy to grab one and post it over to you if needs be. I did check; it was €10 for the patch, so about £7 or £8, I think, but a lot cheaper than the price that you were mentioning. Joseph said, anyone, what's going on with Isak? Nothing much, I presume. Yeah, unfortunately, dude, pretty right. Not too much on it. Sunil, how are you, sir? And thank you. Said, how good is Ekitike? Great movement for a tall striker. Nice touch and finish too. Versatile, so I can play from the left. Good work ethic, complete. 100% I've been pleasantly surprised. I was always honest all summer and said I didn't know what to expect from Ugo Ekitike because I hadn't really followed his career too much, but loved everything I've seen. Loved them in the Community Shield. Loved them yesterday. Loved his goal. Like you said, great at holding up the ball. A real battler up there as well. 6 foot 3, 6'4". Great close control. Really feels like we've got a damn good player and one that I think we're going to enjoy watching. Owen, how are we, dude? Said, our net spend is shockingly low. I think FOFANA would be a great number 2 on the left wing. Guéhi will force Canada to lock in, and Isak is the dream. So totally agree on the net spend, Owen. Now, look, it isn't everything, but when you have a lower net spend than maybe we expected so far, and still are short of personnel, I get your concern. But if we finish the window, let's say, with 130 million Isak signing, 35 million pound Mark Guéhi signing, and maybe, to use your own player, a Malik Fofana or somebody, even selling Elliott, then you're still up to a net spend of 250-ish, maybe a little bit higher, and yeah, it all starts to look a little bit better. But big 2 weeks ahead on, and you know, we need to make sure we don't have gaps in the squad for the end of the window. Hey Craig, hope you're well. Predicted 11 for Newcastle. Yeah, I'll give you a quick predicted 11, mate. Do you want a predicted one or my one? But I'll try to go for Arna's one. So Alisson. Now that somebody said Gomez, I can't get it out of my head, but would he be fit enough to start? I wonder. So I'm going to go Alisson, Frimpong, Canade, Virgil. I think he'll go with Kirkes, Gravenberch, McAllister, Wirtz, Salah, Ekitike, Gakpo. That's what I think Arna will go with. Right, ladies and gents, I am going to say goodnight and go record the late night news update. What's this one? So, Chelsea striker Nicholas Jackson has told those close to him he wants to join Aston Villa this summer, said Football Insider. So that could be a real shit show for us if Villa get Nicholas Jackson and not Newcastle. So I'll talk more about that in the late night news video, but that just dropped into my inbox from Mark right there now. So yeah, not great. Flynn, thank you for the super sticker, bro. But look, folks, I'll see you tomorrow. Keep an eye out for the late news video. It'll be out before 11 o'clock. Appreciate your understanding as well about my grumpy old man nature of wanting respect to everybody. It's not just to me in the chat. But I want you to know as well, I love these streams. I greatly appreciate all your support and your time. And of course, your patience and understanding with me when I do get grumpy. So I will see you tomorrow. Love you guys to bits. Thank you so much. And have a lovely evening. We'll talk soon. Bye.